Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Some reflections on the atheistic view that molecules give rise to a living cell, even a unicellular creature like an E. coli, that's a bacteria in the stomach. And then from there, by natural selection on genetic mutations, they claim that different body plans were developed from one original ancestor. So this theory of Darwin, which he developed about 160 years ago, was built on the assumption that the cell was a kind of homogeneous bag of glob or gelatin-like substance. And there was no real complex, tiny little machines inside of the cell. Now we know that the cell is a living factory. All kinds of moving, what we call nanomachines, little machines that are created or manufactured by the genetic expression, the genetic coding within the nucleus of the cell. So they, having discovered in 1953 the genetic material called DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid, these chemicals, four of a kind, A, T, G, and C, they bind together on the backbone of a sugar molecules called phosphates, and they have a spiraling helix type of formation called the helix system. And within each cell, there are millions of these A, T, G, and Cs, which are bonded together and held together, held upright by the backbone polypeptides or polysaccharides or sugars. And they express information or instructions. Now we know that when we see information, it's very specific. For example, if I took the letters H-O-U-S-E, 5 letters, and threw them in a soup, they would be called Shannon or just gibberish. They would make no sense. However, if I put those together, H-O-U-S-E, immediately you would have an image of a house built with mortar and wood, and there'd be windows and roof. So you'd know that it represents something quite real, a structure, something structural. So certainly the DNA expression instructs this within the cell manufacturing of various machines like enzymes. Now, an enzyme is a macromolecule. It is a protein molecule, and proteins are like the toolbox of the cell. Protein molecules go around repairing organelles within the cell, repairing the membrane, the double membrane of the cell envelope. The cell is enveloped by a fatty membrane made of fatty acids, and they have various. The cell membrane has various gates in it, which are also constructed based on the DNA expressions. So this is called information coding system. It's an information system which was discovered in 1953. The structure of the information and so on, the complex structure, was discovered by a couple of scientists, Watson and Crick in England. So since then, so much advancement has been made showing how complex the cell is, and with more complex information, we find that the probability that it could have happened by chance by some random, molecules knocking together and binding together in a primordial soup 4 billion years ago, the probability or chances of that happening are decreasing as we find more specific information within the cell and more specific structures within the cell, such as protein molecules, which are basically produce enzymes, which are active catalysts within the cell. You also have other building blocks of a cell, such as carbohydrates or sugars, which are highly unstable. So say a carbohydrate was produced 4 billion years ago in a primordial soup, as they say. The problem is that carbohydrates, they always want to bind with things out there in the atmosphere, hydrogen, oxygen, helium, whatever. And that renders them useless or just garbage, chemicals. Because these required chemicals are all very specific in structure and the way they're shaped and so on, configuration. So all these problems are confronting this theory of evolution, whether it's chemical evolution or abiogenesis, the evolution that molecules could somehow have formed into very complex living system called a living cell. The probabilities have become astronomically unlikely, as they say. One of the astrophysicists worked out probabilities, and he said that the probability that life could have arrived by random chance is 1 in 10 to the power 40,000. 1 chance in 10 to the power 40,000 is a huge number. If you realize that 10 to the power 10 is a billion, what to speak of 10 to the power 40,000? It's an insanely impossible number. So probabilities, they realize, are just out of the question. So we have these requirements to produce a living cell, and even with the multi-million-dollar laboratories on origin of life research, still they're not able to synthesize a living cell within their laboratories. And remember, they have to have old earth or primordial kind of situation, relevantly environment relevant to that time, billions of years ago, that early earth, as they say. So even with these advanced technologies and chemistry and so on, they haven't really been able to go from what is called ab initio, or before bio. They can borrow from bio and generate some chemicals and so on, which would support a cell, but they can't do it just from ab initio, from before bio. They haven't been able to do that. So they require at least 4 building blocks, which they, even if they had, they wouldn't know how to bind them together properly. They have no idea. The building blocks are the nucleic acids, as we mentioned, the DNA, and of course RNA is a messenger acid, nucleic acid, which transforms information, transmits information, and translates information to build particular protein machines and other machines to perform different jobs within the cell, reparation, catalysm, and so on. So you also need fatty acids for your cell membrane. It's a double layer membrane. And you require also proteins, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and lipids or fatty acids. Those are the 4 basic building blocks which they have not been able to synthesize from scratch in a laboratory. Now they go on kind of clouding the truth by saying, oh, science has made this breakthrough and that breakthrough. But if you know how to read these chemistry papers, you realize that they're doing a lot of what you might call detouring or cheating. They might order a particular chemical from a laboratory that has already purified that chemical after extracting it out of the earth or something. Then they purify it and then they send it to a laboratory. So they're using something that's been purified. That's called cheating. But from just straight something under a rock or sitting in a big lake somewhere 4 billion years ago, if they took it relevantly to that time period, just out there in the environment, that they haven't been able to come even close. So this is their problem. It's a huge problem they have, but they insist on persist actually, and insist on saying that we're going to produce life within X amount of time. They make these reckless predictions, and then they have it put in mainstream media on, the CNN or different news media corporations, and they ramp up the hype some more. So a lot of hyperbole going on in this origin of life research environment, but they're not even close. In fact, they're getting the goalposts, as we say, the goalposts are actually being moved further and further away. Every year they discover more and more highly sophisticated machinery and processes within the cell. However, what we say is that if you see information, if you see computer program, for example, someone's writing a program in order to express an instruction that the computer has to compute and calculate and so on. And that's all information theory. When you see that, you know that it took a lot of brain investment, a lot of intellectual investment to come up with the programming. And they only have zeros and ones. Whereas in DNA, they've discovered 4 acids or molecules which act like letters, AT and GC, and they work in tandem with each other. A always works with T, and G always works with C. And these are acids, nucleic acids. So in the binary system, zeros and ones, we know that a group of a dream team of software engineers have to really invest their intellect to write advanced software to express and instruct a computer what to do. Massive computers, calculations, and so on. So it always seems to come from intelligence, a person with intelligence, a creative being with intentionality that has to write this software. So we say that the logical conclusion is that some super intelligence has invented and written all this coding that we find in the living cell. It's a code. You always ask, who's the coder? You don't assume that or speculate that, just these different nucleic acids just bounce together and they formed a very specific spiral of called the helix structure within each cell is extremely long. It's all compacted inside the cell with all abundance of information which instructs. Just like when you read a book, there's an instruction, there's an explanation, and it's taking you somewhere. It has some meaning. It conveys meaning to you. If you're reading a manual, how to repair a car, how to take apart the engine in a car, you have to have a manual. That's all based on information content theory. It's information content, and it comes from brilliant brains who invented, the combustible engine or something, or who have studied for years the structure and processes within the engine. So similarly, we say this evidence of an intelligent agent, a super brain, is there behind life, behind the complex structures within the cell, which is the fundamental, foundational element of life, is the living cell. And these cells actually have been designed so that the DNA splits and you can have reproduction of a cell. When the DNA splits, the information goes this way, and then another cell can be created, generated. So all this complex discoveries point to an intelligent designer, intelligent design, and that also indicates a person with intentionality, with motive, with objectivity, and so on. And so we live in this world of cause and effect, a world which it seems that whatever our needs are matched by Mother Nature. We need certain things like oxygen, like H2O, like nutrients, and Mother Earth produces these things. We get H2O in the environment, water, oxygen in the air. It seems to match, just like hand and glove. The hand needs a glove if it's cold. So the universe seems to be very intelligible, as if some highly intelligent person arranged everything for the sustenance of all species of life. So that is our promotion that there is a supreme intelligence behind life itself. And scientifically, we're showing that this idea that life came from chemicals is seriously flawed and highly improbable. So that is what we're presenting based on what science has discovered, and we are running with that paradigm, that model, and based on the Bhagavad-gita, where Krishna says to Arjuna, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matah sarvam pravartate iti madhva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha, that my dear Arjuna, I am the source of both spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So if God exists, then of course he can supply instructions. And the Bhagavad Gita is an enlightened instruction on what life is all about and what my real identity is as a soul, a conscious self, a subjective being within this temporary body, which is like a machine. As Krishna says, Yantra Rudani Mayaya. It's a machine made of the inferior energy, earth, air, fire, water, and then subtle energy is mind, intelligence, and ego or false ego. So this is information that's very important to human society, that they have to understand. Things didn't just come from massive explosion and some random, fortuitous, by luck we have a universe full of order and laws of physics and so on, and various creatures, various types of living beings, species, various species, and all this is going on. And the world we know, all the various species are quite aesthetic. We see that there's aestheticism within the universe, or beauty. People love the beauty of nature. Who's the artist? If you see a beautiful painting, you might ask, well, who did this? And no one's going to say, oh, we just heard a bang and we came into the room and there, poof, beautiful painting of by Michelangelo or whoever, Mona Lisa or something, whatever they love as art. So many indications of a supreme being. We can look around and see those indications. And then the Bhagavad Gita guides us in this way, that what is the nature of the supreme intelligent being? He's omniscient. He says, Sarvasachaham Ridisani Vishto Matasmi Tirganam, that he is in the heart of all living beings, and that he is creator of time and space as well. Time, space, and all the various elements that are contained within time and space. that he is the source of these things. Kalosmi Bharatarshaba, I am time itself. One of his energies is time, but he has many types of energies and potencies. So this is the education that is not being made available to young people and students in universities today. There's no faculty teaching us what is life, what is consciousness. Consciousness is simply a symptom of the living soul, the non-anti-material particle, which is within the heart, floating within certain airs or pranas, and then dissipating, just as it says, just as the sun disperses or sends rays of light throughout the universe and light and heat. So similarly, the soul illuminates the body with consciousness and the power of perception of pain, pleasure, thoughts, feelings, emotions. All these things cannot be approached by the mechanistic scientific methodology. But the science of self-realization is available through the teachings of our spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the Hare Krishna movement, otherwise known as Iskcon, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we ask and prompt people to encourage people to take a look at the teachings of Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. We encourage you to come to our centers and inquire about this applied spiritual technology. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.